Gordon, you are an incorrigible delinquent at times. Behave yourself, man!
Finally, on this week's Law in Action, I want to look ahead to the first public sitting tomorrow of the independent inquiry into child sexual abuse. Dame Lowell Goddard, who chairs the inquiry, has decided that the hearing will deal with allegations against Greville Janner. Lord Janner died at the end of last year, shortly after a judge had ruled that he wasn't fit to stand trial for alleged child sex offences. Ahead of the hearing, I went to see Professor Sir Ian Kennedy QC, whom I first interviewed on this programme 30 years ago and who since then has chaired a number of public bodies, as well as the public inquiry into child deaths at Bristol Royal Infirmary in the 1990s. But would Sir Ian have taken on this inquiry?
My first response would have been, can anyone do an inquiry like this, given its range, given the length of time over which the allegations were made, and also given what the expectations might be of what would come from it?
Given those concerns, is it better to have a go and do what you can? Should it have been the case that Lowell Goddard should very much constrain what she's doing? Or should she say, the whole thing's impossible, I'm just going to walk away from it?
Well, once you set down the notion that you're going to have an inquiry, and the pressure was huge to include this, include that I think it would be very difficult to resist, but not resisting and having an inquiry of the scope that we're led to believe it's going to be means that it'll go on for a very long time. There'll be a significant degree of dissatisfaction at the pace because people want, quote, answers. So I think it looks to me a bit like a hiding to nothing.
The way that she has gone about it is to identify a number of situations that she wants to begin with, and one specific case, the case of Greville Janner, Lord Janner, who died at the end of last year. Before she investigates what apparently went wrong with the investigation of the allegations against him, she wants to establish whether the allegations against him were true or not. Is that wise?
I think there is a danger in the approach to Greville Janner's case that it will become something like a trial. The difficulty is that it can't really be a trial as we would recognise it because the person who is at the centre stage is no longer there. And that will pose very difficult questions about tackling the veracity or otherwise of witnesses. Who is going to represent Lord Janner's interests? So there is a danger, if you convert it into a trial, of it contravening some of the principles which we normally associate with a trial.
So broadly speaking, and summing up, what advice would you give Dame Lowell Goddard as she begins the first preliminary hearing of what we've all agreed will be an immensely long and complicated inquiry?
I doubt she needs advice from me, but what I would say is, first of all, decide what you're trying to do. Are you trying to discover truth or catharsis, or there are lots of ambitions behind it? Then decide how you're going to conduct this. I would urge that it not be conducted as if it were a trial in the High Court, surrounded by all the trappings of courts, because a lot of people find that very intimidating. And then you've got to work out your time scale, and she's already indicated 2020. That seems a very long way away. I would add two other pieces of advice. Communications with everybody is central. Even if you've got nothing to say, you keep having to say something so that you get people to understand where you're going. And lastly, if she makes any recommendations at the end of this 5-year period, just put in a clause to say, I want Parliament to ask in 6 months' time or a year's time, what's happened to those recommendations?
Is that something you did 15 years ago at the end of your inquiry?
No, it's a lesson I learned that I wished I had done it. I learned the lesson from Michael Bishard's inquiry in Soham, where those 2 young girls were murdered. And he said that the recommendations he made, he would want to see what Parliament made of them in 6 months and a year, and he would go back and have a look himself. And that, I think, is an important additional guarantee for the public that something's going to be done.
Sir Ian Kennedy. And that certainly won't be the last we hear about the Goddard Inquiry.